DRC, Mr. Speaker. I am told the M23 are making progress in Bukavu. They are headed near to Burundi, Bujumbura. We must Africa, Mr. We have Sudan crisis, where rapid response RSF is in Sudan, in Africa, in Kenya here. And I have seen the statement from Foreign Affairs from Sudan. We must pursue peace the way we did for South Sudan, Mr. Speaker. We need a peaceful Africa to ensure we have trade. And the only person who could bring experience, who knows the dynamics of Africa, the true son of Pan-Africanism was Raila Odinga. I still insist African Union lost the best. Despite that, His Excellency Ali Youssouf won. Winning in an election does not mean you are competent. It means you have just won. But it doesn't mean that you are bringing the best on the table, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Raila Odinga, with so many years that he has fought for rule of democracy, human rights, devolution, the new constitution, the track record was well-decorated CV that could transform this country, Mr. Speaker. And Raila Odinga has been one of the few leaders who is not tribal. If you see at the voting pattern in many elections he has contested in this country, he has gotten the votes from across the country, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, we need to ensure. Mr. Speaker, the third point I wanted to make, I think it is now the right time to fully implement the NADCO report, the National Dialogue Report, Mr. Speaker. Raila Odinga has huge and well-decorated track record of fighting for democracy, rule of law. When Raila Odinga was fighting the previous regime, some of the people who are in opposition, Mr. Speaker, who are now correcting messes, were in that government that were pursuing even abuses of human rights, and they want to lecture us about, Mr. Speaker, how a country should be run. When Raila Odinga was fighting for this constitution, rule of law, democracy, some of the people who are correcting him, Mr. Speaker, who are fighting him now, were in that system, Mr. Speaker, the KANU system, Mr. Speaker. So therefore, when Raila Odinga comes, we can use him. He has huge, he's an elder statesman, Mr. Speaker, and the full implementation of NADCO, we must make Raila Odinga the Prime Minister of the Republic of Kenya. Even the Prime Cabinet Secretary, the Prime Cabinet Minister, he must, Mr. Speaker, be given that position to assist in expanding, deepening, and widening the broad-based government and stability of this country, Mr. Speaker. We have even started, Mr. Speaker, we have even started even broad-based within Parliament.
Senator Methu, what's your point of order?
Of course, I would not have wanted to interrupt the good senator from Nandi, but I'm standing on Standing Order 105, responsibility of statement of fact. May I know, because I have read the NADCO report page by page to the last page, which of the recommendations of the NADCO report he bases his argument that Raila Odinga is the one that will become the Prime Minister? Because our position of the Prime Minister will be there, but there is nowhere in the NADCO report that it proposes the Honorable Raila Odinga. And actually, I don't think the NADCO report was formulated to assimilate and have Raila Odinga join government. It is actually demeaning the position of Raila Odinga to say that the whole NADCO report is just about creating a position for him. So, Honorable Speaker, I wish that you direct this and find the senator out of order for insinuating that the NADCO report has a clause that proposes that Raila Odinga, the person, becomes the Prime Minister.
Very well, Senator Cherargei. I think you've understood the question.
Yes, I've understood. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for seeing you today in the morning. Mr. Speaker, as I encourage, and after this I will buy an air comp for my brother, Senator Methu, I agree. In fact, he has answered himself by insinuating. I didn't say the NADCO report has the name Raila Odinga. As a leader, I believe Raila Odinga should serve this nation in any capacity. And in my own opinion, as the senator of Nandi, I feel he should be given the position of Prime Minister. We need to expand and fully implement the National Dialogue Committee report. We are already doing broad-based. We are now in this across the aisle. We are exchanging chairs within Parliament, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I want to insist, even as we move forward, as we broaden the engagement of broad-based government, the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, Mr. Speaker, has the history of this country. He has the track record of rule of law. He has served as a Prime Minister before. There is nothing unique, Mr. Even as we push to amend the Constitution in Article 257 or 256, either by popular or parliamentary initiative of the Constitution 2010, he can serve at the moment as the Prime Cabinet Secretary as we reorganize the government going into the future, Mr. Speaker. Even Senator, it is free, my brother Senator Metu, and he knows I have tremendous respect and we respect each other. We are even pushing for an enactment of official opposition leader. So as they fight in his formation, Mr. Speaker, I'm telling them there is already a seat where the people like Wajakoya, people like Alonzo Mushoka, people like, and the rest who will lose in 2027 after William Ruto is re-elected by the support of Baba, they will be automatically, will finance them. We'll give them an office, we'll give them official cars, we'll ensure they sit either in the Senate and National Assembly. And that is the NADCO report that we are proposing, Mr. Speaker. So no one will lose. We hate to see people who are so losers, who are shouting in centers, funerals. We want them to stop talking from funerals. We want them to come to the floor of the House and critique the government. And I want to assure you, with the support of Raila Amolo Odinga, William Ruto will be elected by over 80% for his re-election. In 2032, people like Eddie, tunaweza anza kujipanga at that level, Mr. Speaker. So I want to say in conclusion, because I've seen my time is spent, Mr. Speaker, let us have an open mind. This nation, the young people sitting at your gallery, need the guidance and leadership of this. We must agree as a nation. We want a nation. When you go here to Tanzania, they don't care which tribe you come from. You are a Chaga, you are a Suguma, you are a Maasai. They don't care who you are. They will only elect you because you are competent, Mr. Speaker. So we need to encourage as a nation. Let us have a tribeless leadership, Mr. Speaker. And I want to encourage the minority side led by Senator Ledama. Even as we engage on broad-based, you must clean your house. We cannot be saying we are broad-based, yet we have people who are opposing the broad-based within yourself, Mr. Speaker. And I know you know the person you are seated next to you on your right, Mr. Speaker. It is better to give that seat to Senator Hedy and other people, Mr. Speaker, so that you can have a one united front. Let us release people like Senator Wambua to go and oppose government freely instead of opposing government within. This is a broad-based government. May it long live under the leadership of William Ruto and Raila Odinga. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I support and I thank you.
Senator Eddie Okech. List.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And as the leader of the Migori delegation, I must say that on this motion, my people who gave me the chance to be in this house are sad. I will not lie that they were disappointed that Raila Amolo Odinga did not become the AUC chair. They had hopes and dreams that Raila Odinga would become the AUC chair so that he could be able to be a bridge between excellence in the continent and our people in Kenya. And indeed, the people of Migori County were championing and rooting for Raila Amolo Odinga. So it is no question that they are sad. And Mr. Speaker, in any such situation, whether it's death or losing an election like what happened, Mr. Speaker, if you are sad and somebody else is laughing, that person does not want the best for you. It doesn't matter whether whatever brings you sadness is something that brings them happiness. It just means that they don't want something good for you. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that anybody who has laughed, celebrated the loss that we had in Addis has got no best interest of our people at heart, especially the delegation that I'm presenting and representing from Migori County. I remember, Mr. Speaker, Nelson Mandela, when one day he was asked by a journalist on his take on the Cuban positioning in terms of the Cuban War with regards to other people as well as Muammar Gaddafi. And Mandela told the journalist that many people think that their enemies are supposed to be South African enemies. Just because you have got some enemies somewhere, they are not going to be ODM's enemies. We as ODM, and we as a people from Migori, and we as a people from Nyanza, and I believe this is the spirit that every other nation that finds himself or themselves in the corridors of the country called Kenya, we don't make enemies because other people have enemies. We treat people with the same attitude that they treat us with. That is the area with which we differ with many people who celebrated this. But that said, Mr. Speaker,
Senator Cherargei, would you like to be informed by Senator Cherargei?
Senator Cherargei is a very serious ranking member. Let him inform me, but within a short time.
Mr. Speaker, I'd just like to, with a lot of indulgence, to inform on the issue of Mandela, it was not Cuban war. It was the Palestinian war on the issue of PLO. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, you know, Cherargei. Anyway, thank you. But Mr. Mandela was asked the question on the issue of his relationship with the Cuban fighter, we call him Fidel Castro, and also on the issue of him with Muammar Gaddafi, who tend to have been very polarizing figure in a number of it was not just one war, but a number of issues that affect the entire continent at that time when South Africa was being seen as a terrorist nation just because they were fighting apartheid in South Africa. And his thinking was that any relationship that they're making with people or any friendship that they're making with different people is based on how those people treat South Africa, not based on the enemies that those people have. And that's what I'm trying to say also, that our politics as ODM going forward will be based on how people treat us and how people respect us and the contribution that we make to the country. But that said, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that there is a Swahili word that says Mugala muue aki mpe. Despite the differences that different people have with President Ruto in the borders of our country, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we are very grateful for the kind of support, for the kind of commitment, for the kind of dedication that President Ruto gave to Raila Amolo Odinga in the process of running for AU. And I want to tell the President, Mr. Speaker, that there's a book that Chinua Achebe expresses about a lizard that fell out of an iroko tree. You know, this lizard fell out of an iroko tree onto a rock, but the lizard did not break its back. And around it, because it's just a lizard, other animals were there, but they were not able to celebrate the lizard. So the lizard looked around, and because nobody saw the lizard dropping down as something big and not breaking its back, the lizard said to itself, I am so strong that I fell out of that iroko tree, but I didn't break my back. I'm telling the President that even if some people want to close their eyes on the kind of support that you gave Raila Amolo Odinga, even if somebody will not say thank you to you, even if some people will talk negatively about it and try to put you down, be the lizard that fell off the iroko tree and thank yourself because you know how much effort you put on this campaign. That's a very sincere thank you from me. But then I must also thank Raila Amolo Odinga, because taking a continental stage in a place that you don't have control, His Excellency the PM Raila Amolo Odinga, taking a serious continental stage in a place that don't have control of presidents, when people are not bold enough to take that step, that is valor. That's a towering spirit that we want to see of many Kenyans. And I hope that many young people can glean morals from the courage of Raila Amolo Odinga to be able to take some risks. That even you as a young person today, whether you're Gen Z, or you are a millennial, remember the times that perhaps you grew in Kawangware and you could play some games, some card games, and people could discourage you, but you never saw why you should not take the risk of being in the streets. But then, today, you are something. Raila Amolo Odinga has taught us that you can keep on fighting and taking risks for dreams that are bigger than you. And if your dreams as young people don't scare you, you're not worth living. Take big dreams. Take big steps. Learn from Raila Amolo Odinga. He has fought big dreams that some of them today we are benefiting from. There are countries that have got internet today, but you cannot post things and talk about anybody on the internet because you fear that you will go to jail, because you fear that you will die, because you fear that you will have serious consequences. But in our nation today, many young people enjoy not just the social media platform, but they enjoy any kind of expression that they want to have on those platforms. It is not to be taken for granted that those rights that you are enjoying to be people to express yourself online are not just rights. They are rights that saw people like Raila Amolo Odinga battered, beaten, and taken to detention for you to have those rights. So even as some people try to put him down, that valor, that courage, and that towering spirit must live among young people in the country called Kenya and in the African continent. But that said also, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Odinga did not just show up on this race as just a candidate who had no contribution to make to our country and who just wanted a job. On February 27th, last year, Mr. Speaker, Raila Amolo Odinga did express himself to the agenda and the vision that he was bringing to this position. And I want to agree with what my brother Senator Kajwang said, that this vision that Raila had is not just vision for the sake of getting an AU position. It's a vision that we as leaders in this country, extended to leaders in other countries that believe in the African dream, and more so extended to the leader from Djibouti, my brother Ali Youssouf, who has taken this position, must cast their eye upon. Because African continent is constantly under threat, Mr. Speaker. The movement of goods, the movement of capital, the movement of labor in the continent to make a working economy is still a daydream that we have never achieved. And let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, that the issue of AU is not just about regional politics in the African continent. It is also about global politics, because we are competing with other continents as well. We have got China, which is a nation and also as big as a continent with populations of over 1 billion. We are competing with them. We have got America that we are competing with. And don't think that the advancement of a common market in the African continent is something pleasing to other people. And therefore, it's a commitment that cannot just be an issue of politics in the continent. It's an issue that the continent must commit to, the dream that Raila had, from making sure that goods and services can move with robust infrastructure. Raila Odinga held a very strong view on why we must make sure that we silence the guns in the continent and ensure that the security, so that capital, goods, and people can be able to move in the continent and work and build a continent. Raila Odinga held the strong view that we need serious connectivity between Djibouti and Senegal, between Cape Town and Cairo, so that movement of people, goods, and services can be easy. Raila Odinga held the very strong view that the continent must have a single visa, so that moving around the continent can be easy, so that a Kenyan who is born today without opportunities in the country called Kenya can as well move to Nigeria easily or move to Egypt easily and be able to find opportunity for themselves. So that somebody who is in Egypt, who cannot find their talent meeting the opportunities in Egypt, can move to Kenya and find opportunity that works for them. The dream of Raila Amolo Odinga was a continent where you are born does not define whether you die or you live. That dream must live. with the people of Africa. That dream must live with the President of Africa. And Mr. Speaker, it is not a small dream. It is a dream for which some of us who went to Addis Ababa and saw what happened in Addis Ababa have picked that dream, we will continue with it. That one day, if not us, our children will see a united continent on the basis of economic excellence, on the basis of social justice, on the basis of politics that is good, that can advance the quality of life for the African people. And those dreams will not die, because Raila Amolo Odinga cast them on that stage called the continental stage. So it's not a matter of light politics of just being in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, we have seen in this continent young people being radicalized because of lack of economic opportunities, economic emptiness, turning young people to be Al-Shabaab militia, economic emptiness, turning young people to be Boko Haram militia. And we see that same kind of trend even in the continent today, that people who the country had no confidence in, when they were serving at highest level and they were impeached in these houses, Mr. Speaker, radicalizing even young people who are in this house. You find young people being made to sing Mau Mau wars, to dress like Mau Mau, to live themselves unkempt like Mau Mau, to start behaving like Mau Mau in a way that is radicalizing people who are elected to come to this house to be able to promote a concept of national unity, promote a dream for young people in this country, and they're being radicalized. Therefore, we must start thinking, Mr. Speaker, we must start thinking of how we can be able to make sure that economic opportunity and good policies for young people are made possible, so that radicalization of young people can stop, not only in Kenya but in the continent.
Eddie, Senator Wakoli, what's your point of order?
This is our honorable house of distinguished, high-profile leaders. My good brother, Honorable Eddie, has alluded that honorable members are dressed like, look like, hair like Mau Mau. Honorable Chair, it's important for my good friend to have responsibility of statement of facts, but coming out clearly and showing to us among members here or those without this place, who is it that looks like Mau Mau, hair like Mau Mau, so that the Honorable House is cleared of any misconduct. Thank you, Honorable Chair. Speaker.
Speaker, thank you. It seems like the senator, the good senator from Bungoma, is the only visitor from Jerusalem. I will send him some pictures of Mau Mau, people who fought, and then he can make his own judgment to look at people around who look like Mau Mau. But that said, Mr. Speaker, I must say also that we must also accept the negative that happened in this area, called the fighting for this seat. I want to encourage the majority leader that let's not be blind to the fact that foreign policy in this country is still not sober. And there are positions that you can take as a people that must be based on a foreign policy. Today, Mr. Speaker, whether you are a Democrat or you are a Republican in the American politics, when it comes to certain issues, America has clear foreign policy about them. And I don't think that we don't have a foreign policy that works. I think that we don't have a domestic policy that works. Because if you've got a strong domestic policy, Mr. Speaker, then you extrapolate your foreign policy from your domestic policy. What is our policy about our businesses, Mr. Speaker, for instance? That our businesses that are locally grown, homegrown, must be protected, must be taken care of. If that is our domestic policy, then that becomes the interface with which we interact with the external world. If our foreign policy here around our resources is strong, then that becomes the angle with which we relate with other countries. It is no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that the first round and the second round of Mr. Odinga's votes, he had consistently been ahead of Djibouti. And even if we don't know who voted because it was secret ballot, Mr. Speaker, we can say without a doubt that the shift started happening when the candidate for Madagascar dropped. And that shift, when it happened, we saw the Djibouti candidate gaining votes. Therefore, even if we are not mathematically sound, we can argue that there is high likelihood that the people who are voting for Madagascar shifted to Djibouti. And that is an indictment to our foreign policy. Why did they shift in that direction? It means that we haven't chosen as a people that on certain issues that are cross-cutting in the continent, whether it's the DRC war, whether it is the coup in the continent, a number of coups are in the continent, whether it is the issue around Israel, whether it's the issues around Commonwealth, all these issues, Mr. Speaker, must have one inclination. They must have an inclination towards a sober domestic policy that defines how then we engage the external world. It has to be that our nation must advance our national interests first when we are approaching the world, because that is the only way we survive as a country. And there are a number of areas that I think that these particular laws gives us an opportunity as a nation, gives the president an opportunity as our leader, gives the executive an opportunity as the cabinet, and gives us as a parliament opportunity to be brave, to be courageous, to be honest to ourselves, and interrogate the strength of our policy when it comes to our domestic inclination. Because if we don't interrogate that and bury our heads in the sand, Mr. Speaker, we will not be stronger tomorrow to face such wars. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, I must say that Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, His Excellency Baba, is a person who has got zeal and zest to have a country that works. Even at instances that in the past regimes, Baba has supported some elements of people in governance, he has never taken any opportunity or discarded any opportunity to talk about the ills that are in government, to talk about the excesses that are in government, and to talk about bad things that are going on in the country. Including recently, when we were dealing with the issues of abductions, Baba Raila Amolo Odinga stood firm and fought abductions. And so are his soldiers who fought abductions. I can assure you that Raila Amolo Odinga does not need to be told where he's going to go. When he comes, after resting, he will give us direction on where he stands and where he goes, and therefore speculations must...
Thank you, Senator. Senator Wambua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also want to take this opportunity to join my colleagues in recording the thanks of the Senate on Kenya's attempt for the position of the chairperson of the African Union Commission, AUC. Mr. Speaker, I want to begin by saying that this is an important debate. A debate that was moved very well by the majority leader. But when debate began, then I wondered what happened between the time that he moved the motion and when the debate began. Because from one side of his mouth, he said that he would want to listen to opinion and views from members as to where we may have gone wrong and lost this seat. But on the other side of his mouth, he is insisting that we got it right. And so I wonder then, what are we going to be debating? The Speaker, having said that, I want to begin by thanking His Excellency the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga for offering himself to vie for this continental seat. The Speaker, to offer himself, in itself, the Speaker, was a true demonstration of courage and the spirit of Pan-Africanism. I liked and envy the energy of His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga that Mr. Speaker, he was able to move to every corner of the continent to convince presidents and heads of government to support his bid. That energy, Mr. Speaker, was really, really enviable. Mr. Speaker, the thing that really touched my heart was the fact that His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga kept his cool throughout this process. From the campaigns, even to the election date and the announcement of the results, our leader kept his cool. And I remember, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, there are people who think that they are closer to these leaders than some of us. I want to actually disabuse that notion. That, Mr. Speaker, before the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga went to Addis for the election, I spoke to him on Tuesday. And he was very clear in his mind what he was going to be doing. And to me, the words that ring to my mind to date is that if I win, I win. If I lose, I lose. Whether I win or I lose, I'm a Kenyan, I am a Pan-Africanist. Mr. Speaker, that is courage beyond measure. And I want to congratulate him for having that courage to go for the seat. Mr. Speaker, when Raila Amolo Odinga went for this position, it was not about him, it was not about his party or his coalition, it was about Africa. And it was about carrying the Kenyan flag highly on the African scene. And Mr. Speaker, His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga did not disappoint. He carried the flag of our republic on the continental scene and did the best that he could. We want to congratulate him, Mr. Speaker. We also want to thank the presidents that voted for him, Mr. Speaker. Garnering 22 votes throughout, Mr. Speaker, I think 3 or 4 election cycles, Mr. Speaker, is not a simple feat. We want to thank the presidents that had faith in his leadership and voted for him. Mr. Speaker, there is another notion that I want to debunk from the floor of the Senate. The people who say that His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga does not accept defeat. Mr. Speaker, His Excellency himself conceded defeat on the floor of the Mandela House during this election. What I want to say to those people who say that Raila does not accept or concede defeat is that if he loses fairly, he will accept as he did in Addis Ababa. If he loses unfairly, he will contest that election. He has done that before, and for that courage, I also want to thank and congratulate him. Mr. Speaker, Kenya may have lost the election. We may not have brought the African seat home. But I want to say that to a very great extent, as a country, we won our space on the African continent. And let us continue to try as much as we can to be the pride of the region. Mr. Speaker, let me also congratulate the winner of the election, Mahamoud Youssouf, and wish him well. We shall live to fight this battle another day. Mr. Speaker, having said that, the question that the majority leader posed, and I would have wished that he was here, on what it is that we could have gone done wrong? What could we have better? Mr. Speaker, I think that's where the conversation should sit. Mr. Speaker, it is very, very unfortunate that our foreign policy does not seem to be serving our national and regional interests in the way that it should. The Speaker, I heard Senator Onyonka being put to task to substantiate the obvious. As a Speaker, I just want to urge our colleagues, all of us, to be truthful to facts and the reality of our time. The Speaker, when in December of 2023, the Congo River Alliance, bringing together opposition politicians from DRC and the March 23 grouping, the rebel group, in Nairobi, and they launched the operation in Nairobi. Mr. Speaker, it is open to everyone, even school children, that on that account alone, Kinshasa withdrew their envoy from Kenya in protest. It's on the record. At the same time, Kinshasa even threatened to withdraw from the East African community and actually recalled their ambassador who was sitting in Tanzania. That's where the question that we should ask ourselves is, if we had handled this matter of M23 in Nairobi differently, would the results have been different? Those are the questions, Mr. Speaker, that we're asking ourselves. And as leaders, we cannot. Mr. Speaker, you know, I listen to colleagues speak at times and I wonder, if His Excellency, the Right Honorable Engineer Raila Amolo Odinga, was speaking the language of some leaders who speak on the floor of this house when he was our age, where would he be today? Where would this country be today? The Speaker, Raila Amolo Odinga is not a person that is given to sycophancy or praise singing. He will say it as it is. And I'm very sure on the matter of the activities of M23 and the Congo River Alliance, their activities in Nairobi, I'm very sure, I don't even to ask him, I'm very sure he takes a very different view from the view taken by the executive, the National Executive of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, today, you know, the quest for the AUC chairmanship is not the end of Kenya's quest for leadership in the region. There will be other positions that other Kenyans are suitable for. And I want, for the avoidance of doubt, to state that some of us consistently have believed in the leadership of Raila Amolo Odinga. We have campaigned for him. We have voted for him for many, many years. The people that speak here as though they know and support Raila Amolo Odinga more than other people have never voted for him even once. If anything, they have demonized him the most. Mr. Speaker, the engagement of Kenya and our neighbors is not ending with the end of the elections in Addis Ababa. Mr. Speaker, what we allowed to happen on our capital yesterday, Mr. Speaker, was not right. And we must tell this government as much. To allow the rapid support, their involvement in the crisis in Darfur, the killings, the torture, the maiming of people, Mr. Speaker. And we allow those groups to come to Nairobi and pretend to form a government of Sudan from Nairobi, Mr. Speaker? What do we expect? What do we expect, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we have not had the last from the administration of General Buran, who is now running some form of administration from Port Said. These people have messed up their country. Our role as a neighbor should be to help these people come together and rebuild their country, not to take sides with one rebel group against the other rebel group. Mr. Speaker, that move, it is those kind of moves, Mr. Speaker, that we are saying, you know, the M23 move, Mr. Speaker, let's just face it. On account of the Congo River Alliance being formed in Nairobi, and the fighting now in eastern DRC, the takeover of towns, South Africa has lost many soldiers. Tanzania has lost many soldiers. Let us just ask ourselves as human beings. The president of South Africa, the president of Tanzania, the president of DRC Congo, when they went to cast the ballot in that reality, where were they likely to cast their ballot? Mr. Speaker, these are the questions that we should ask ourselves. And stop being sycophantic or emotional about things that we can see as leaders are not going the right direction. Mr. Speaker, I want to advise. And I keep saying that I am maybe the least qualified to advise the National Executive. Mr. Speaker, this country belongs to all of us. Those who support the current administration and those who don't. We all belong to this country. And Mr. Speaker, the presidency of this country is not coming to an end with the end of the term of office of President William Ruto. Beyond him, there will be presidents. Before him, there were presidents. The thing that we must do, Mr. Speaker, is to ensure that while he sits in office, we have a stable country. A country with a very robust and good foreign policy that protects the national interest, but also takes care of the regional interest and the global interest. I like what Senator Eddie said. The Speaker, being at the continental scene is not just about the continent. It's about our engagement with the outside world. It's about a continental economic bloc. The Speaker, as a country, as Kenya, we must make sure that we play a rightful role in that conglomeration, Mr. Speaker. We cannot be a country that is pushed to the periphery on matters foreign policy, while in pursuit of interests that could be very, very personal. Mr. Speaker, lastly, I want to reiterate that I heard Senator Cherage make a very loose comment about the people that have stood with His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga when he fought for the Constitution, democracy. The Speaker, I don't agree with Senator Cherage a lot. On this one, I agree with him. I want to ask him to go and check his records and tell this country who those leaders he's talking about are. Those leaders who never believed in the provisions of this Constitution that Raila Amolo Odinga pushed for. Those leaders whose business, the primary business, was to demonize Raila Amolo Odinga and what he stood for then. Where I come from, Mr. Speaker, as a Christian, new converts have a lot of zeal. People who convert to the faith, they have a lot of zeal. And they believe that maybe they have gotten saved today and tomorrow they are going to heaven. So they have a lot of zeal. Mr. Speaker, those of us who are old in that religion, our work is to just tamper the zeal and tell them to cool it down. You know, the world will come to an end, Jesus Christ will come back, but it will happen at the fullness of his timing, not at our timing. The new converts in the political scene in Kenya, I want to tamper their zeal. Let them move slowly, the Speaker. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon. I support.
Thank you, Senator. Senator David Wakoli Wafula.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Nashukuru sana kwa nafasi hii. Naona ndugu zangu upande wa walio wachache kwa leo wanatabasamu Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu ya kongole na sifa ambazo tunamiminia Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga kama mpeperushaji bendera katika Afrika kuwakilisha nchi ya Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, mgala muwe na haki mpe. Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga amekuwa kielelezo cha ustahimili wa demokrasia katika nchi ya Kenya. Amedhihirisha kujitolea muhanga kutetea haki ya mnyonge wa nchi ya Kenya, kutuliza mawimbi ya kisiasa katika nchi ya Kenya, na vile vile kunyosha mkono wa heri njema kwa wapinzani wake wa kisiasa, tukitangulia na Mheshimiwa Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, Mwai Kibaki, Uhuru Kenyatta na sasa Mheshimiwa William Ruto. Mheshimiwa Spika, hivi ni vielelezo ama sifa za viongozi ambao kwao Afrika ilikuwa inaona nyota, na nyota ilikuwa imeangaa kule angani. Mheshimiwa Spika, Afrika imepoteza kiongozi shupavu, kiongozi aliye na msimamo, kiongozi anayeheshimu itikadi na falsafa tofauti katika Afrika, kiongozi ambaye anaelewa changamoto za watu wa Afrika, na hivi kwamba tajriba aliyonayo katika siasa za nchi ya Kenya, na kwamba alikuwa mmojawapo wa viongozi katika Umoja wa Afrika aliyekuwa anashinikiza na kusimamia miundombinu katika Afrika nchini humo. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga amekuwa mtetezi wa haki za kibinadamu. Juzi amepasua mbarika na kupeana msimamo wake kuhusiana na vifo na kupotea kwa Wakenya. Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga na wengine vile vile amekuwa mojawapo wa wale ambao wamekuwa wanashinikiza serikali za kibepari kubadilisha mfumo na kuongoza nchi zao kwa matawi na katika kufuata katiba za nchi hizo. Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga vile vile ameonyesha dunia nzima na Afrika kwamba ni lazima kufanya biashara kati ya nchi za Afrika, kuboresha uchumi za nchi ya Afrika, na ilidhihirika walipoungana na Mheshimiwa Mwai Kibaki kuleta mfumo mpya wa kiuchumi na kusisimua uchumi wa Afrika. Nimesikiza seneta wenzangu wakitaja na kupokezana makonde ya kisiasa kuhusiana ni nani ambaye anamfuata Raila Amolo Odinga kwa haki na kwa matendo. Mimi naomba kwamba tusiwe vinanda vya kisiasa Mheshimiwa Spika, lakini tutende kulingana na maazimio ya Wakenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, Raila Odinga anashinikiza kuwe na demokrasia na vyama vya kisiasa. Viongozi walio hapa lazima wasimame kidete na tuseme kwamba katiba inakubali vyama vya kisiasa. Katiba inakubali kwamba kuwe na uhuru wa kisiasa na mahusiano ya kisiasa. Sasa mimi nataka kuona viongozi wenzangu chipukizi, tunaposimama kando na kuwa vinanda vya kisiasa, sisi sasa tuwe watunzi wa nyimbo za demokrasia na kutetea hadhi na falsafa ya demokrasia katika nchi ya Kenya. Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga amepigana vita dhidi ya ufisadi, na naamini angetoa uongozi wa Jumuiya ya Afrika, angeongoza mapambano dhidi ya ufisadi katika nchi za Afrika. Changamoto nyingi zinazoendelea katika nchi za Afrika, vita vinavyoendelea ni kutokana na ufisadi. Na mimi naomba kutokana na jumba la Senate tuone viongozi wakisimama kidete kupigana vita dhidi ya ufisadi katika nchi ya Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, Raila Amolo Odinga amedhihirisha kwamba kusulubiwa kisiasa sio mwisho wa safari. Aliwekwa korokoroni, akaondoka, na si Biblia tunasema Paulo na Sila waliomba, milango ikafunguliwa. Wengine wetu pia ni wajukuu wa kisiasa, tumewekwa korokoroni na tukatoka. Kile tunataka kushukuru Mheshimiwa William Samoei Ruto ni kwamba ulijitokeza muhanga, ukamshika mkono Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga. Viongozi wote wa upinzani wasiokuwa upinzani walitembea na nyinyi katika baraste ya kuombea Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga afueni na utoe ushindi katika nchi ya Afrika na katika nchi ya Kenya. Mimi ni kuomba tu kwamba tuendelee kufanya kazi kwa pamoja, tuendelee kufanya majadiliano ya pamoja, tuendelee kupigania haki za Mkenya na Afrika, ili siku itakapokuja tutaulizwa yale tuliyotenda kwa mujibu wa katiba na ujio wa siasa za nchi ya Kenya. Kwa hayo mengi, kwa niaba ya watu wa Bungoma, kwa niaba ya watu wa mkoa wa Magharibi, kwa niaba ya chama cha kisiasa ambacho kimebobea na kina ukomavu mkubwa wa kisiasa, chama cha Ford Kenya, kilichokuwa uasisi wa demokrasia katika nchi ya Kenya, tunampa heko na kongole Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga kwa kupeperusha bendera ya nchi ya Kenya, kumshukuru Mheshimiwa William Ruto kwa kujitokeza muhanga kama rais wa nchi ya Kenya na kutembea na Mkenya mwenzake. Na mimi ningewaomba wale wenzangu ambao wana wivu, wana moyo na inda mioyoni mwao kuhusiana na Raila Amolo Odinga, iwapo hauwezi kupiga hatua mbele, usimuonee mwenzio aliye na hesabu na aliye na uwezo wa kupiga hatua mbele, kwa sababu hatua hiyo ndiyo Kenya inastahili kuchukua ili tulete ukombozi na urejesho katika nchi yetu. Mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga, nakutakia maisha mema unapoendelea kuongoza mchakato wa demokrasia na kuungana na Mheshimiwa William Ruto, na sitaki kumsahau Papa wa Roma, Spika wa Bunge la Kitaifa, ambaye yuko papo hapo kuhakikisha Kenya inasonga mbele. Asante sana na Mungu awabariki.
Senator Olekina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me begin by congratulating the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga for being a statesman and seeing where the elections were heading, where it would create a situation where we would not have a chairperson to represent the African Union in the secretariat and the administrative organ of the African Union. If he did not concede defeat early, we would have had a situation where we repeat the elections over and over again. Mr. Speaker, what the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga demonstrated in the African continent is that as a leader, he has not always been there for his own gain. It has never been about Raila Amolo Odinga. It has always been about the good of the continent. When I was a young student at the University of Massachusetts, my third year, I took a course on international relations. And that is when I knew the complexity that exists when it comes to dealing with issues, international relations. The African continent was subdivided into two, Anglophone and Francophones. And these two separate ideologies are very complex. Anglophone countries have always demonstrated progress. They have always shown the way forward. But unfortunately, most of the Francophone countries have always been left behind. And you can see, even in the reasoning, you can see, even in the development of our countries. Anglophone countries have managed to be able to leapfrog on different sectors. If you look at Kenya as an example, Kenya developed the first money transfer system to be able to assist those less fortunate, people who are in rural areas, to be able to also get banking services. This is not something that is found across the continent of Africa. We have 55 countries. If Raila Amolo Odinga would have been given the opportunity to become the chairperson of the African Union Commission to be able to advise the 55 presidents, to be able to give his wisdom on all the different organs of the African Union so that we achieve the African Union goal of 2063, where we have good hospitals, where we have good road networks, where we trade. This continent would have had a very different perspective on good leadership. But that never happened. And in fact, if you compare the two candidates, I dare say, even in terms of understanding of the role that the chairperson of the African Union Commission plays, Raila Amolo Odinga was way much above the gentleman who eventually won. And this is easily demonstrated by the speech of the gentleman who was now declared the winner, when he came out and said, oh, they came with money, they know, but we only came with God. It shows a complete different understanding of what that role is. What I expected of Mohammed is that he would have said, we are now here as a continent. My role now is to act as a key advisor of all these 55 presidents. You know, a lot of people did not understand the role that Raila Amolo Odinga was going to play as a chairperson of the African Union Commission. The African Union Commission was established in 2001 and commissioned in 2002 as an organ to develop policy to support the African Union, heads of states. Mr. Speaker, you could equate it to the Council of Governors, where you have the Secretariat of the Council of Governors. The Council of Governors advises the 47 governors that we have in this country. So people took it differently, you know, but that shows how powerful Raila Amolo Odinga is in this continent. When you sit with the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, he'll tell you that the vision he has for Africa is to unite the Nile, is to drench the Nile, so that we can have transport directly from Egypt coming down to East Africa. I hope that now the new chairperson of the African Union would be able to borrow that from Raila Amolo Odinga. I love what Raila Amolo Odinga said, that I'm still available to offer my services, my advice to the African continent, if any other position arises. That shows maturity when it comes to leading Africa. We're a continent that is divided. And unless we all sit down together and reevaluate the 2063 goals of the African Union, by 2063, you will still find African countries that still people beg in the streets. I think I'm tired of seeing people beg. I'm tired of going to our counties and finding that we have got no